Hey everybody, and welcome to the studios of WTHR. I, of course, am Dominic Miranda, and this handsome gentleman beside me is Dom Tiberi from our sister station in Columbus, Ohio, WBNS. Dom, thanks so much for joining us as we continue our pre-game coverage of this highly anticipated national championship between Notre Dame and Ohio State. So, okay, we're here in Indianapolis. We, of course, have been covering Notre Dame extensively throughout this college football playoff national championship run, and, of course, in Columbus, Ohio, Ohio State is everything over there, and they've been covering the Buckeyes extensively throughout this season. So, Dom, thank you so much again for joining us as we break down this game. Two Midwest teams, two huge brands. First of all, tell the people a little bit about yourself, how long you've been covering the Buckeyes, and just maybe initial kind of projections and a preview of this one as the Irish and the Buckeyes get set to square off in Atlanta.
Well, Dom, I got to admit, this is a first, the two-time there's two Doms together. But let me just say this. I've been doing this a couple years, 43 years I've been covering the Buckeyes, and I have a chance, hopefully, to witness my third national championship win for Ohio State. You know, I look at this football team that Ohio State has, and Ryan Day, who I think has done an amazing job coaching this football team, said at the beginning of the year, and I don't think we fully understood, but what we're witnessing here is the professionalism of college football. And, you know, he said it's going to be more like the NFL, and he's absolutely correct. When you look at what Notre Dame and Ohio State has had to do this year with the teams they've had to play, especially Ohio State, in the playoffs, you know, they lose to Michigan, they come back and they get Tennessee, who was ranked 7th in the country. They get top-ranked Oregon, and then they get third-ranked Texas in the semifinals. And you look at what Notre Dame's been able to do along their stretch, the teams that they had to beat to get here, and it's really amazing. And, you know, Ryan Day said at the beginning of the year that they were building everything for what was going to happen at the end of the year, that they might be playing 16 games this year. They might play 17 games this year. It turned out it's going to be 16 games, but it's been a season of attrition. It's been a season of where you better have depth, and it's going to be next man up. And I look at Ohio State and I look at Notre Dame, and that has been the case with both clubs. Both clubs have had to go to reserves, and they've had to step up with the next man philosophy. And you're absolutely right. There are no two bigger programs in America than Ohio State and Notre Dame. This is at the top of the tower. I mean, these two clubs meeting, this is going to be the hardest ticket to get. And, you know, the college football playoff world cannot be happier to have these two giants meeting for the national championship on Monday down in Atlanta.
Yeah, I want to say maybe the most expensive national championship ticket we've seen in quite some time, maybe ever, I think I saw. But to your point, it's great to see two Midwest teams, right? A Big Ten representative there in there, an independent. Of course, a lot of conversation about if Notre Dame should be in a conference or not, but here they are, two cold weather teams, if you want to call them that, in the national championship. And I think it's extremely interesting what you said. The first iteration of the 12-team playoff in college football, whoever wins this will have earned it. You mentioned Ohio State's path, Notre Dame hosting Indiana, playing the SEC champ Georgia, beating Big Ten powerhouse Penn State. There's no more questions about either of these teams. And there were a lot of questions surrounding Notre Dame, of course, after that Week 2 loss to Northern Illinois and their schedule this regular season. And then, of course, Ohio State, that disappointing and stunning loss to Michigan to end the season, only to have probably the toughest path in the college football playoff, and now to be here almost, giving Ryan Day that sense of relief when, man, was the conversation loud surrounding him at the end of that season, and now they're here. But to your point, battle of attrition. I want to ask you about Ohio State's health and kind of what's led them to this point, and especially this offensive onslaught during this college football playoff national championship run. But to your point of the battle of attrition, you know, for those who don't know, Notre Dame has battled injury after injury to significant players this season. Before the season, what was going to be their starting left tackle, Charles Jagasaw, goes down with a torn pec. He's out for the year. Boubacar Traore coming on that defense. He's out at the Louisville game. Jordan Botelho, Ashton Craig during the Purdue game, winning 66-7, but at what cost, losing those two guys. Benjamin Morrison in the Stanford game, one of, if not the best corner in the country goes down for the season. Riley Mills in that Indiana game, he's out for Georgia and Penn State. This defensive line has had to adjust. And then most recently, 2 offensive linemen go down in that game against Penn State. Anthony Knapp, who replaced Charles Jagasaw, goes down. Charles Jagasaw comes back in the game at guard. So battle of attrition, you're absolutely right. But I want to ask you about Ohio State. What has led to this offensive onslaught in these playoffs? I think they're outscoring opponents upwards of 40-0 in the first quarter. And how are they health-wise ahead of the national championship?
Well, Ohio State, other than the guys that are out, Seth McLaughlin and some of those guys that were injured, it's been a makeshift offensive line, but they have reloaded. And, that's something that Ryan Day talked about. They were building depth with this football team. And I give him all the credit in the world for attracting the players they have and the next man mentality. So the fact is Ohio State is probably pretty healthy going into this game. They've had their issues, but they've, got the O-line where they like it. I think that, the Michigan loss was a shock, and it was a wake-up call. And you're asking about the offense. There's a simple philosophy that I tend to follow. Get the ball to your best players. And that has been the difference. That is what we have seen in these playoff games, especially the first 2. There's a guy on Ohio State's team that wears number 4. He's a true freshman, and Jeremiah Smith. And let me say this, ladies and gentlemen. I've been doing this a couple years. He may be the best player I've ever seen put on a Buckeye uniform. And I'm going back to the great Archie Griffin. What this kid is doing as a true freshman. Now, I give Texas credit. They found a way to take him out of that game, and I'm sure Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman's going to try to do that. But the thing is, pick your poison. Texas tried to take him out. Well, the Ohio State guys, Emeka, Egbuka, Carnell Tate, those guys stepped up. And so, it's like Ohio State has some thoroughbreds when it comes to the receiver position, and they are using them. And the fact of the matter is, Dom, I believe Ohio State is now using the passing game to open up the running game. And we saw that great screen pass to Travion Henderson that went to the house. I mean, they were just trying to get into field goal range, and boom, he's gone. And so, the passing game has opened that up. It's also opened up the running game for both Quinshon Judkins and Trey Henderson. That's the double-headed sword there. But the other thing is I want to give credit to the offensive line. They had to make some adjustments, and since that Michigan game, they are now clicking and they're rolling. The other thing I want to say, and I will say this, defense wins championships. It is a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. And Ohio State has the number 1 ranked defense in the country. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame has number 2. Whichever team wins this on Monday, I promise you, defense will be what we're talking about. I believe the defense will dictate this game, and we'll see which defense can. We saw that in the Texas game when Ohio State stopped Texas on the goal line. That goal line stand was amazing, and they're getting ready to score, tie that game up, and then Jack Sawyer, who is the heart and soul of this football team, knocked the ball loose, scooped it up, and ran it back for a touchdown, and that was the end of the game. And who knows, we may see a play like this. But, I covered Marcus Freeman when he was here at Ohio State, he and James Laurinaitis. And, of course, James is now coaching the linebackers here. He was at Notre Dame a year ago. But I promise you this, Marcus Freeman is a great coach, and he will have his guys ready. And that's why when people come up to me and say, oh, man, Ohio State's an 8-point. I don't want to hear that noise. Ryan Day doesn't want to hear that noise. The players don't want to hear that noise. And I'll tell you, if Coach Woody Hayes was still living, he would tell you, if someone comes up to you and tells you how good you are, you kick them in the shins unless they're an 80-year-old woman, because they're trying to make you soft. And Ryan Day does not want his guys soft. And I promise you, I just talked to Jim Tressel a few minutes ago, and he said the same thing. These are 2 outstanding football teams that are going to meet, and he says, I'm not picking either one because I just don't know right now.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I think the general sense across the country is Ohio State is a far more talented football team. When you look at roster construction, when you talk about Jeremiah Smith like you did, that's some pretty big praise for someone who's been covering the Buckeyes for quite a long time. To put him in that class of maybe perhaps one of the best Buckeyes ever, when you have wide receivers who've come through like Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., and the list just goes on and on and on. And not only for the receiver position in Columbus, but at large, that's some high praise for a 19-year-old kid. But he deserves it. He has been all over the field. You talked about that backfield with Judkins and Henderson, the two-headed monster. I did want to ask you about Will Howard, but before I get there, the point on the defense, I had it written down here. I think when it comes to opponents' points per game, Ohio State is 1, Notre Dame is 2. Notre Dame has been leaning on this defense all season long, despite the injuries to Riley Mills, to Benjamin Morrison. They've had true freshman play in Leonard Moore over there at the cornerback position. This linebacking corps built of freshmen and sophomores. KVA, can't say his name, Kingston Villamoso-Iwasa, something like that. He plays extremely well. KVA, Drake Bowen, absolutely incredible. He's an Indiana kid in that linebacking corps. But to lose the players they have and to maintain the level of play they have on the defensive side of the ball, like you mentioned, speaks volumes not only about the culture in this team, but that culture is cultivated by Marcus Freeman, a former Buckeye. So a bit of a question here. Will Howard, to me, has seemed to raise his level of play in this postseason. What have you seen from him, and what changed with this Ohio State team and maybe Ryan Day after that disappointing loss to Michigan? I mean, that's enough motivation in and of itself, Dom, but to see what they've done offensively and defensively, like you mentioned, it's a full team game, and the level of opponent they've beaten this playoff run, what's been the change? Is it one singular thing, or is it just this talented roster showcasing what they can do?
Kind of like what I said before, I think it was a wake-up call, what happened at Michigan. And I think it's as simple as this. They figured out a way to get the ball to their best players. I personally believe Will Howard has played well all season long. He's been a leader, and he's come in here, and he came here for one reason. He could have gone to the NFL. He could have gone to other colleges. He came to Ohio State because he wanted to win a national championship, and he thought this was going to be the best chance he had to win the national title. And now he's come here and he's fallen in love with Ohio State. He told me the other day he's sad that he's only going to get 1 year of this. But this is the world of the transfer portal, and this is what we're having. And I just think this, when I look at Will Howard, he's a great kid. He's a great leader. And this guy is a competitor. He wants to win. And so, I give him all the praise there is. But I just think it's as simple as the fact that Ohio State's got these weapons, and they're going to use them. The other thing, I look at Notre Dame, and I want to hear what you have to say about the Irish. To me, I think both defenses are talented and very similar. To me, I think Ohio State has the advantage when it comes to offense. But let me say this. I think I've watched Notre Dame enough to know that they're going to try to slow this game down, I think, and they're going to try to run the football. They've got some outstanding backs, but their quarterback, to me, this game is on him. And my question to you is, do they run him as much as we've seen, and is he the X factor in your mind?
100%. And the way you described Will Howard is the exact same way I would describe Riley Leonard. He said after the Orange Bowl in Miami, I came here for one reason and one reason only, and that's to give myself the opportunity and to win a national championship. And despite everything that's happened this season to Notre Dame, injuries, the noise that followed a Week 2 loss at Northern Illinois, they have gotten here step by step, 1-0 all the way. Riley Leonard is this. He's not going to impress you throwing the football. He makes throws when he needs to make them, but it is his legs, it is his running ability that keeps teams on edge back there. And not to mention the depth they have in their backfield. Jeremiah Love, perhaps the best athlete and running back that's ever gone through Notre Dame. I've heard that from multiple people who've covered this team and fans alike who are just absolutely impressed with Jeremiah Love and what he brings to the table. Now, he was beat up. He was questionable going into that Penn State game and had perhaps the toughest, most incredible effort on a 4-yard touchdown run I think you'll ever see, shedding 4 tackles and giving the Irish the lead late in that Orange Bowl game. But yes, to your point, Riley Leonard is the X factor. He has to have his best game. That game almost slipped through Notre Dame's fingertips, and that's odd to say because they were dominated in the trenches offensively and defensively more so than I think I've ever seen, not just this season, but when you're talking about Notre Dame offensively and defensively, it starts and ends up front. That has been their identity, even dating back to the Brian Kelly era. And to see how Penn State had their way with them and running the football was truly remarkable. But what was more remarkable was the response and resiliency and the adjustments made by offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock, defensive coordinator Al Golden, and the messaging remains the same with Marcus Freeman. If you're in the game, we're down 7 points, we get the ball first half out the window. It's going to go from there, and we're going to have success. But Riley Leonard, back to my point, that game almost slipped through the fingertips when he's turning the ball over. He needs to play mistake-free football. Notre Dame cannot turn the ball over against Ohio State and expect to win. They're going to have to play a mistake-free nearly game to give themselves a shot against a team of this stature in Ohio State. So that's where it starts and ends. 13's got to have his best game all season. You can't give the ball away to Ohio State because this offense has shown they're going to make you pay and make you pay in a hurry. But the identity of Notre Dame is running the football, like you said. And what impressed me the most as well is they didn't go away from that. Even when they were down 10-0 to Penn State, it felt like 77-0 with the way that game was trending. 141 rushing yards for Penn State in the first half. That doesn't happen to Notre Dame very often, but they stuck with the run. They began that first half with 3 straight runs, double pulling with Jeremiah Love. They found something. They made an adjustment. They kept that run game going. And then when Riley Leonard's getting it going on the ground too, he's just a load to bring down. He's quicker than you think. He has long strides, and in short yardage and red zone situations, he is going. I think everybody in America knows he's going to be getting the football, and a lot of times he's still successful in those short yardage and red zone situations. But defense is the name of the game here. That's what's been carrying Notre Dame all season long. They've held opponents at bay. They've bent but not broke. They've gotten pressure on the quarterback, and really what's impressed me is the back end. Xavier Watts is an All-American safety. His progression throughout his career at Notre Dame has been impressive. Christian Gray has had one of these seasons, but man, he has the biggest play in the USC game, a pick six, and the biggest play of his life, a pick against Penn State to set up that game-winning field goal. These guys, what I'll tell you about Notre Dame, they don't get rattled. Marcus Freeman has their ears. It's clear how much he cares about them, and it's clear that these guys will do anything and play harder than most of their opponents and a lot of times be more together than their opponents. And that's what Lou Holtz told Marcus Freeman. You got to have a team that's more together than the team you're playing, and you got to have guys who are going to play harder than the teams you're playing. And right now, that's what's carried Notre Dame throughout this playoff run. But I want to ask you as well. We know all about
Let me just say one thing. You mentioned Lou Holtz. Let me just say one thing. And I know Lou Holtz. I love Lou Holtz. But let me just say this. This Ohio State football team can play physical football. And they will play physical football. And let me just say a couple things about Will Howard and Riley Leonard. First of all, I have great respect for Will Howard. This kid is just, he's just a great kid, and I think he's a great competitor. I've seen Riley play, and, I think the same of him. Let me just say this. Here in Columbus, Buckeye Nation respects Notre Dame. The players respect Notre Dame. Now, I know there's been some other talk from one of your former quarterbacks, Malik Zaire, talking about Will Howard. I mean, that's fine. He can say that. He can believe what he wants. But in my opinion, two of the best teams, the two best teams in the country will play Monday night, and no one's disrespecting anyone at Notre Dame from here in Columbus. I promise you that.
Well, that's great to hear because I tell you, Dom, the noise is loud. And I think a lot of Notre Dame fans are a little bit tired of seeing Malik Zaire pop up on their Twitter feeds because I'll tell you, he did a big lot of nothing during his time in South Bend, and things have only gone up at the quarterback position since he got out of town. But to your Lou Holtz point, I know that was a huge storyline last year. Lou Holtz calling out the physicality of the Ohio State Buckeyes, and don't think Ryan Day appreciated that all too much. And it seems that they've embodied that physical, the identity of their team, I guess I would say. And it's been really impressive to watch Ohio State. But I was going to ask you about the perception of Notre Dame. And you mentioned kind of off the top, the spread's pretty large. I think America is in agreement that Ohio State is the more talented team and, dare I say, expected to win this game. But a former Notre Dame offensive coordinator Chip Long said the 2 worst words that he can hear is good job, right? And you said Woody Hayes might be kicking some shins if he hears how good this Ohio State team is doing. So what is the perception of Notre Dame? These are 2 great teams, like you said, 2 similar teams almost. Ohio State with a little more offensive firepower, but just in Columbus and in your opinion, the perception of Notre Dame ahead of this game.
Well, let me just say this. I know that Ryan Day and the players have great respect for Notre Dame. Notre Dame would not be in this game if they were not elite. And, you know, I just talked to Jim Tressel not long ago, and we were talking about when he won the national title in 2002 against a Miami team that Ohio State supposedly had no chance against. And they figured out a way how to beat this Miami team that have won so many games in a row. And, you know, getting in the game is the key. But once you get there, you got a shot. And it's like Tress said, you don't know what the play is going to be that's going to change that game. And, you know, you're in this game. It's a once-in-a-lifetime shot, so you're going to go for it. And I have been saying for the last week, since we found out it was going to be Ohio State Notre Dame, I've said it, and I'll say it again. Don't sleep on the Irish. Don't sleep on Marcus Freeman. And the perception is that at least I just left Ryan Day and the players, they got nothing but respect for Notre Dame, and they know this is going to be hard. They know this is going to be a battle. They have won nothing. What they did against Tennessee was impressive. What they did against the number 1 ranked team in Oregon was even more impressive. The way they went into Dallas, a home game for Texas, and they figured out a way to win that game. Jack Sawyer with that incredible strip sack for a touchdown, running it back. But you know what, Dom? None of that matters now. None of that matters. What you did then does not matter. And you got to keep the blinders on, and you got to be focused. Both teams have to be focused on the mission at hand. You are in this game. And once you get in the game, you have a shot to win it. All the other 12 teams, all the other 10 teams that were in, that was their goal to get to this point. But now there's only 2. Someone's going to win it. Do I think it's going to be Ohio State? I hope so. I think they're going to win. But you know what? Marcus Freeman and his guys are thinking, hey, we think we can win this game. And that's all that matters, that you think you have a shot. And, you know, it's going to come down to penalties. If Ohio State has 9 penalties against Notre Dame like they did against Texas, if Ohio State throws an interception like they did against Texas, if they have 2 interceptions like they did against Michigan and one of them's a pick 6, they could be in trouble. I mean, and this, again, is a very good defense Ohio State's going to face. But, you know, and understand betting lines, the way they work. Vegas is very smart.
Yes,
they do these betting lines because what they want to do is they want to make money at the end of the day. And the betting line is nothing but trying to entice people to bet. I don't know. Is Ohio State an 8-point favorite? I don't know. They were a 21-point favorite over Michigan. How did that work out?
That's a great point right there. And what I'll say, and this kind of leading to us closing it out here, is Notre Dame has done an exceptional job of, you mentioned belief. When you get into the game, anything can happen, right? People expect Ohio State to win perhaps, but I'll tell you, I'm hard-pressed to find a lot of teams who play for their coach and have a belief like Notre Dame has showcased, not only in this playoff run, but this entire season. I mean, Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman has said over and over again, we've been playing playoff games since week 2. We knew one more slip-up, we're not even making the dance. So the pressure has been on for the bulk of this season when it comes to Notre Dame. But they've done an exceptional job not only of the belief in their head coach, in each other, despite the injuries, despite the talent disparity in a lot of these games, but they've done a great job of making opponents play their game. And a lot of times you see this in a lot of sports. When it gets to this level of the postseason, it's what do? Do you play to your identity better than the other team plays to theirs? Do you play to your strengths better than the other team plays to theirs? And Notre Dame has done a great job of making teams play their game, play their style. And you mentioned slowing down the game, not turning the ball over, maybe controlling time of possession. That's going to be the key for Notre Dame. That's going to be the key for an offense that doesn't rely on moving the ball down the field and Riley Leonard throwing 50-yard bombs or anything like that. They got to stay ahead of the sticks. They got to eliminate penalties. They got to be perfect when it comes to field goals, and Mitch Jeter has been absolutely nails this postseason. Dating back to the IU game, he was 3 for 3 against Georgia, had the biggest kick of his life against Penn State. That is going to be key. But if Notre Dame can eliminate explosive plays, control possession, eliminate turnovers, they're going to give themselves the best chance to win. The stakes are high. They haven't won a national championship since 1988. They haven't been to one since 2012. They are now just emerging as saying, hey, Notre Dame football is back and we're for real. Hadn't won a major bowl game since 1994. They won 2 in a span of a week. So the stakes are there for Notre Dame. But the last thing I'll end with you, and please, anything you want to add here. Does it mean more for Ohio State? Does it mean more for the Buckeyes and Ryan Day? What are the stakes when it comes to Columbus? Notre Dame knows all about that. They're hungry. They haven't been here in a while. But what are the stakes, and how do you envision this game going?
Well, I think the stakes are high for both clubs. I mean, you know, the fan base for Notre Dame is just as big as Ohio State's fan base. I mean, and I know what the Irish fan base is like. And so I think the stakes are high for both programs. I think for both teams, the fact that they're in this moment and at this game, this is an opportunity to become a legend. And as I said, this could be my 3rd national championship. I saw Tress win in 2002. I saw Urban win in 2014. And now Ohio State in 2025 has a chance to win it all. I think this game, and I think you're absolutely, as I break it down, Ohio State has so many weapons on offense. And we'll see how that matchup, to me, that's going to be one of the key matchups that I want to see. Ohio State's explosive offense against that stingy Notre Dame defense, and they've done a good job of, you know, slowing teams down and stopping them. If they cannot slow Ohio State down, it could be a long day. But I think Notre Dame's defense is going to be a challenge. The other thing is Notre Dame, I believe, with Riley Leonard and Love and the stable of running backs, they're going to try to run the football. They're going to try to have long, sustained drives, and they're going to try to keep their defense off the field. And the longer that can go, if they can do that with Ohio State's defense, it could be a long night for Ohio State. I personally don't think that's going to happen with the way I've seen Ohio State's defense play ever since that first loss to Oregon. And I will remind you that in that first loss to Oregon, Ohio State had 0 quarterback sacks of Gabriel. In the meeting in the Rose Bowl, Ohio State sacked him 8 times. This defense has, it's pretty diverse what they're doing now. And I think part of that was by design, that they're saving the best for last. And I think they still have some things up their sleeve. And I guarantee you, Notre Dame has the same. They've got some things up their sleeves. But I'll take it back. To me, this game is going to come down to this. Whoever plays clean football, whoever doesn't turn the ball over is going to win this game. And I think it's going to be Ohio State, but we will see. Like I said, and I'll preface what I said before, I know Marcus Freeman, and I've got great respect for that young man.
Well, we certainly agree right there. Whoever eliminates mistakes is going to give themselves a serious shot of winning this football game.